Now, I want to talk to you about another important key called resilience. Because when things happen, whether they're tiny emergencies or great big huge ones, everybody around you will take their cue from how you react. And this is really important, especially if you have children, because children learn what they watch you doing. And if you fall apart when you hit a bad patch, they're going to think that's how you do it. And if you are resilient and you get through it, they're going to remember that in their own lives when they leave home. Anyhow, what happened was I was making candles in the basement and we were growing, and we knew that we couldn't make a living on it. So we moved the business to northern Minnesota. That was not my choice. I wanted to get out of snow country, but I was married to a man who was Finnish, and he said, "We're going home to Minnesota." And that's what we did. But I drew a line from Duluth to Fargo, and I said, I won't live north of that line. And I think when we moved there, the line actually ran right through my living room. So we moved there in this old trailer. It only had 2-inch walls, and which is not good in snow country. And we built that little brown building there to make the candles in. The first winter we were there were 10 days in a row where the actual temperature was between 40 and 51 below zero. The propane turned to jelly in the tank, and the furnaces wouldn't run. But anyhow, we got through that. And then a year or so later, we got divorced, and he moved south. So there I was in northern Minnesota with 2 little kids making candles in that oversized garage. And I was their sole support, so it was a little hairy time. But with the kids, I never talked about money. We never talked about, things are tough. It was always, well, let's do another art fair. We'll go to another craft fair if we needed the extra money. So anyhow, the next summer, this was what happened to my building. It went to the ground. And I mean, it was devastating, really. But what happened was the next day, when people came out and the ruins were smoking and smoldering, and I wasn't curled up in a little fetal position bawling my eyes out. Instead, I was on the phone and I was calling suppliers, send me wax, send me wicking, send me molds. And within 2 weeks, we were actually shipping again out of my dining room and a neighbor's garage. And my kids learned from that, that, you don't cry and sob and whine, because that's all wasted energy. You put all that energy into building again and growing again. These were pictures of me actually sitting in the ashes. And what's sort of interesting is all of my books were out there because the house was too small for my collection. And I must have had hundreds of books. And I poked around in the ashes, and I only found 2 out of all the books. And this is what they were: A World of Flame and Touched by the Fire. And I don't cry when I look at those books or feel sad, because to me it was the universe saying, you know what, you're going to get through this. It will be okay. So I learned all of this from a piece that Ann Landers had done, when somebody said to her, how did you get all this wisdom of what you tell people to do when they hit a bad patch in their lives? And she said, when I was in 3rd grade, the teacher called us up around the desk. And on the desk, they had a stone crock and a glass bottle of milk sitting in the crock and a hammer. And the teacher picked up the hammer and hit the bottle of milk. And of course, it shattered into, a million pieces. And then she said to the kids, okay, who's going to help me put this back together? And all the kids said, you can't put that back together. And the teacher said, you're right. You can't put that back together. And as you go through life, you're going to come across all kinds of situations that you simply can't put back together. So think of this milk bottle and think of the hammer, and then try to remember, can I put it back together or not? And if you can't, then don't waste your time on it. Just turn and go and find something that you can do. And I think that that story is what sustained me through the fire and why I was able to handle it as well as I did. Now, one of the ways to become resilient is to learn to think differently, which involves retraining your mind. And we'll explore several ways to accomplish that. One of them, of course, is to find a mentor, someone you can knock ideas around with and back and forth, and that person will help you expand your mind. You know, many people have the mistaken idea that if they get a coach, it means that they're not quite good enough on their own. But in actuality, the opposite is true. Many people who are very competent and high up in their fields have coaches. Michael Jordan had a coach right up till his last basketball game. Now, a coach or a mentor can help you stretch your mind. Let me give you an example. This is your mind. Your mind thinks in boxes. And you have to learn to start thinking out of those boxes in order to get more creative around your problems. The thing is, it's impossible to think out of a box because that's the way our mind is set up. However, we just have to create new boxes with new information. I'm going to give you a little fun thing to do here right now. This is a little fun mental exercise, okay? What you want to do is you want to connect all 9 of these dots using only 4 lines, and you can't pick your pen off the paper. The pen has to stay on the paper. So go ahead. I'll just leave this up here for a minute and you can think about it. Remember, 4 lines, and you can't take your pen off the paper. And they have to be straight lines. Okay, we're going to go on. You can work on that some more too, but I'm going to show you the solution to it. And as you can see, you know, our mind says, okay, we have to stay within those 9 dots. But no, you don't really have to. You can go out of the dots and then come back in. And, you know, so much of this is beaten out of us when we're children. You know, Johnny colors the tree and the teacher says, but Johnny, trees aren't purple. But to Johnny, they were purple, and he liked a purple tree. And I'll tell you, by the time they're, 3rd, 4th grade, that kind of creativity is just sort of drummed out of them. And so those are the things that we need to think about. Now, here's another little exercise you can do. Take a square and making equal parts within the square, how many shapes can you make? Well, you can make 4 squares, and you can make 4 vertical squares and 4 horizontal, not squares, but shapes. And then it gets a little more tricky, but you can do triangles to the side, triangles up. You can do weird shapes. And I just did these by hand, so they're not going to be perfect. And here's a shape that you can do, and you'll have 4 equal parts. And here's a little more geometric one where you can have 4 equal parts. So if you train your mind to learn to do things like that and just look outside of what you traditionally would do, it really helps your mind see new things. You know, when you go outside, look in the clouds and see what kind of shapes you see. Watch the shadows. It's amazing what the world will look like to you once you stop looking at it like you normally would. Now, here's the most important thing that you need to know. To get what you want, you have to take action. So many people have ideas, but they never move on them. They never take action, and so they don't get where they want to go. And I'll tell you something else. You're going to work harder than you've ever worked in your life. But you know what? It's not going to seem like work. And it's not work if you really love what you do. One of my favorite sayings is, when you work for yourself, you always have a good boss.